Did you know that St. Luke's University Health Network, based in the Lehigh Valley, Pennsylvania, has been recognized by the U.S. government as the highest performing health system in the United States for quality? You heard right. St. Luke's #1 recognition affirms our status as the top leader among the most respected healthcare providers in the nation, including Houston Methodist and the Mayo Clinic. To state it simply, if you want to receive the best care when you go to a hospital, come to St. Luke's.
Listen, all you New Yorkers. Taxi!
Okay, man, we're looking around.
This is the 77 WABC minicast.
Good morning. This is Mike Stoller for the Stoller Real Estate Report. As I would say, happy days are here again. What do I mean by that? I mean that office leasing is moving up, residential conversion of office buildings to residential are in focus, and there are a lot of good things happening in the New York marketplace. So today I have a dean of the New York real estate market, my friend Kent Swig, who has a variety of jobs. One of them is a principal at Swig Equities, principal at Brown Harris Stevens, and needless to say, a principal at Hemsley Sphere over there. I'd like to thank you for being here.
It's a pleasure, Michael, and thank you for having me.
So tell me what's your thoughts about the market today with different areas in specific.
Sure. Well, if you look at the commercial marketplace, who would have thought that we would be in the situation in New York City where we are today, which is rather extraordinary. You've got Class A rents, pushing over $200 and in some places over $300 a square foot. You've got projects that on 625 Madison, where Related has decided to go build a commercial building instead of a residential building. And you've got the vacancy or availability rate that's falling. And the city is doing extremely well. The rental market and the residential is also doing very well. It's painful for some because the rents they're climbing and very, very high. And the condo market is holding up quite well. So overall, New York City, I would say, is come out of the COVID era and is doing rather well for ourselves.
What do you consider the reasons for doing so well?
One of the things that it was simply put is that New York is New York. We're the largest city in America. We're the financial capital of the world, and people want to be here. The other thing is that the resurgence of urban living, which has been 25 years in the making in America, is quintessentially here in New York City. Young people want to be here because it offers a variety of lifestyles in terms of whether it's the arts, whether it's sports, whether it's entertainment, the movie industry, the film industry, all kinds of things, business obviously, and it's a haven for people around the nation to want to be here in New York.
But it's impossible to live here for many people.
Well,
you have two young sons,
yeah.
Okay, and they have to live in New York. They have to pay rent. It's difficult.
That is a problem. So one of the big things that we're confronting is affordable housing. And there are some solutions that can come for that, but it is a very difficult thing. If you look at New York City's housing market, the whole market, we have, right now about 8.3 million people living in New York City approximately, and we have roughly 3.1 million housing units. Half of that, 2 million, is rental, and then you've got about 1.4 million plus or minus of things to buy. Roughly 1 million townhouses or 1 to 3 family homes, mostly out of the boroughs. There's only 10,000 in Manhattan, and then you've got approximately 200,000 co-ops, which is nothing, condos, pardon me, and then you've got about roughly 400,000 co-ops in the whole city. So we don't have housing, and one of the things we need to do is to increase the housing in the city, and especially affordable housing.
So what are your suggestions on how to increase affordable housing?
Well,
and tax the rich.
Well, here's the thing. I think you can create affordable housing without taxing the rich, and much like when you raise children, right? You find that when you give incentives to somebody, you get a better response than threatening punishment. So what I would do is to take, and the city doesn't have money to go do this. So how do you make that happen? One of the things is the city has an abundance of air, right? So that's free. So air rights you make available, and you make it with certain restrictions, if you will. So I would look at, which I've said before, the largest boulevard in New York City, Queens Boulevard, which is underserved in terms of FAR. It's got a low FAR area. It's got good public transportation. And I would say to that area, we're going to increase your zoning to 15-to-1 FAR if you choose. If you don't have to have it. But if you'd like it, we're going to take the city, we will take the air that we have for free and extend it to you for free. But you have to put 30%, 40%, 50% affordable housing in your project. This way you're giving incentives to developers. They, in my opinion, will go out and build, and you'll increase the housing stock tremendously.
But that's for rental housing.
Which is what we need typically. The for-sale housing typically is, yes, it's very expensive, but right now what we need is affordable rental housing for the population that works here. And if you give incentives to people, typically you're going to get and you have it attached to that, an affordable housing percentage, I think that you'll see a lot more affordable housing without the city having to pay money, without the city having to give funding, and without having to go out and get, other kind of alternative financings from the federal government.
What about the conversion market? What's your thoughts about the conversion market from office to residential, especially since we're on 3rd Avenue, which at one time used to be Accountants Row, and now it's Apartment Row.
Right. So you're exactly right. For me, that's very, very exciting. If you look at from 41st Street to 48th Street, 49th Street, right where we are, there's probably 4,000 units that are coming online that are being converted from commercial to residential right now. And I think that does two things. One, it reduces the amount of sort of Class B office space that is not quite as desirable in the market, and that's the first step. That's a nice thing, but more importantly, it adds rental housing into the marketplace, which is sorely needed. And then I think there's another byproduct that people sort of have overlooked, and that is that those people living in those units don't want to reverse commute out of the city and work somewhere else. They want to work in the city. So that's going to put more pressure on businesses to stay in Manhattan and or expand in Manhattan. And those businesses that during COVID said they don't need an office in Manhattan now recognize that they do need an office. And if the employment is going to be here, they're going to have an office in New York City. So I think it's a very, very positive
So when you're
thing.
talking about having an office in the city, we're talking about co-working, co-shares. What's your thoughts about that? The WeWorks of the world and the co-share.
Well, I think that one of the things that's identified with WeWork, which has changed now, which was a hyperbole of business, industry. It was overblown and hyperbolized in what they could produce. Co-working has been around for a lot of years. I think co-working will continue to be around for a lot of years, but now I think it's stabilized. Under WeWork, if that's a euphemistic term, in effect, because a company is doing well right now, happen to be a tenant of my family's at 1460 Broadway and doing very well and always did well there. But I think that it's now balanced out to where it should be, which is that it provides a good service, and in an environment today where a lot of entrepreneurial companies are trying to start up, I think it's got a great place. I think that what happened is that they overexpanded and over thought.
What about owners running their own office sharing business?
I think there's nothing wrong with that, and I think it's probably good. It is a specific, unique business unto itself. I could tell you the first time I was exposed to it was in 1980. In the 1980s, under actually a friend of ours, Sam Rosenblatt, who was working with the firm Swig, and Arno, and came up with the idea that they would have we would go out and have co-working experience or small boutique suites at 1411 Broadway for the garment industry that couldn't necessarily afford to be in their own offices there. And it worked well, and I think under certain circumstances it worked well, but it is a independent type of business. It's not real estate per se. It's an operating business. It happens to function in an office building, but you have to be dedicated to that business. You have to have marketing to that business and the services to that business itself. Then it makes sense.
You were always involved with Lower Manhattan. What's your thoughts today about Lower Manhattan?
I love Lower Manhattan. As you know, I came up and coined the term FIDI for the financial district in that area and still own the trademark on that, in fact. And I'm still very, very bullish. The conversions down there are going, at a very rapid pace. It's up to 75,000 people living down there. If you looked at 20 years ago, there was 10 or 20,000 people. So it's grown tremendously there, and that gives a very, very strong 24-hour area, and that is now a very active 24-hour marketplace. Unfortunately, right now they were more difficultly hit during COVID, and they have the highest vacancy rate or availability rate in Manhattan at the moment.
What's the availability rate today?
It's pushing about 18%, right? So Manhattan's 15%, Midtown's 14%, they're about 18%.
And what kind of rents?
The rents everywhere are moving up. So they're in the 40s. You can go find space in 50s, but take a look. American Express just agreed to go into World Trade Center 2. That's an extraordinary dedication and commitment for New York City as well, particularly in the Lower Manhattan. And congratulations to Silverstein Properties that it now finishes off the entire World Trade Center, but for World Trade Center 5.
So as I would say, what is your outlook for 2026 and 2027?
Okay, well, so there's one major, hangover, if you will, that's hanging over all of America and in real estate, which is hotels, residential, commercial, and that is the interest rate environment. So there's roughly $2 trillion of debt coming due in America in 2026 and 2027. That $2 trillion is pegged anywhere from 2.5% to 3.5%, and moving up to 6% to 12%. And that ripple throughout America is having a very, very tough effect. So if you have debt coming due, you have pay downs that you'll have to do because the underwriting doesn't work at the levels of debt that were there that may have been conservative at one point, but 10 years ago or 5 years ago, but today aren't. And so owners are confronted with having to pay down their debt and or find partners, right, or find partners in there. So that's one big thing. The second thing that's going on is that the under $100 million debt market has changed dramatically. The banks that we used to know and work with aren't really in that marketplace, and they've been replaced by debt funds. And the debt funds that are out there, are charging 8 to 12% or more, and getting it because the banks have really exited that. So that, I think, is one of the biggest problems facing real estate right now.
So I look forward to having you back later on in the year to see how the predictions turned out. And thanks very much for being here.
It's a pleasure. Nice to see you, Michael.